I was an 18-year-old when we went in, and I landed on the D-Day +5. I got as far as the beach, and they kept me on the beach to do several things. They needed help, and obviously I was chosen. And I worked in the sick bay. I was a stretcher bearer. I helped unloading. The island is, you'd have to be there. You could not appreciate the turf and the sulfur smell, which persisted wherever you were.
I'm sure I wouldn't have been here because I had to land on Iwo 3 times. A Japanese fighter had come from underneath, which was not seen by our crew because there were other fighters coming in through the formation head on. Anyway, thought we're going to have to bail out or ditch, but the pilot wanted to get back to Iwo if he could, and so we finally got to Iwo, and there were about 85 other planes trying to get into Iwo at the same time. It took us 3 go-arounds going around the island, and we had to fly the plane. The pilot had to fly a plane with 2 dead engines down. We had elementary radar, picked us up, and we got guided into the fighter strip with about 10 minutes gas left.
We escorted tankers, troop carriers, cargo ships, and many, many types of training. Our ship was designed for a submarine killer, and we did a lot of that practicing and a lot of hunting down submarines.
As soon as we hit the beach, we got intense fire out of the caves and pillboxes and everything else from the mountain. They could see us, but we couldn't see them. We immediately became under intense fire. There was no place to hide. You just had the feeling laying there in that sand and trying to move up the slope. You just knew that you'd never make it. As a corpsman, there were a lot of casualties on the beach. I went to work right away.
I landed on Iwo Jima on the first afternoon. I was in the 24th Regiment out of the 4th Division. Our mission was to be the division reserve. We would come in when needed and where needed, and we had been kind of told that we probably wouldn't be needed until the 2nd or 3rd day. We got needed, of course, first afternoon. There was quite some difficulty getting in. We didn't have any Higgins boats available. The Higgins boats at that time, late in the afternoon of the first day, were all being used to take the wounded from the beach out to the transports. Each transport became a floating hospital. So they finally put us on an LSM, which is a smaller version of an LST, carries 5 tanks. And we found about 150 survivors out from the 25th left. We put a fire team with each of the survivors that we could find, and we stayed with them all night and fought the Japanese who were coming up from underground passages and trying to retake that end of the island so they could put their death trap plan back in, which would mean that they were firing down the beach from both ends of the island. Well, we held on, and I remember the Japanese coming up. I can still see that was the only hand-to-hand combat I've ever had in the Marines.
The main thing I can remember about that island, among other things, was they were dirty. They had 3-inch long cockroaches, and they always try to get into your rations when you're trying to eat them. And one of the jobs I had was to go with I remember there was an Army major who was an intelligence officer. He wanted to find out where something was, so we went down to one of their caves. They had left a couple of sentries outside. And down in the cave where they lived, they had dug compartment into the soft rock. It was, besides all the sand on the outside, the rock and the island was very soft, so they dug those holes in there, and that's where they started.
We were sent up there to land and to stay. The island was secured. for at least a month, and I think longer. The Japanese were coming out of their caves at night looking for food, some of them were kind of fanatic, and they liked to kill Americans. So we ran around at night trying to keep our area secure. And if you ever moved around and didn't know the password, probably a bad night for you.
Up and over we went, down the ridge. We located the area by the flare light. And it was then that we found the shell hole that would serve as our command post. We then began to set up our equipment and began communication. With 4 flash range wiremen and 2 riflemen, we transported 2 telephones and 2 half-mile reels of wire to the top of Mount Suribachi for the code talkers. Upon reaching the top, I spotted that beautiful flag. I was so close that while flapping in the breeze, it hit me in the head and nearly knocked me on my butt, believe it or not. I felt pride, trust, devotion, honor, all as a result of dedicated teamwork.